Hey, good morning, Horizon Church. And I think I'm in the habit of doing these pre-recorded ones, and I apologize for that. Just the schedule is a little bit on the hectic side right now, so pre-recording another one of these. So anyway, you have maybe heard the expression, you can't step in the same river twice. And that's one of those comments that you occasionally hear people say, hence the thumbnail of a child stepping in a river. You can't step in the same river twice. And the idea is that change is constant and a river is always flowing, and that you step in the river one day, but you go to step in it another day and it's a different river. And it's a really interesting concept, that idea that you can't step into a same river twice because change is constant. Because it really is true. Change is about the only thing that is always the same. You can always count on the fact that things are changing. And I want to talk a little bit about that just briefly this morning, just because of some comments that I've had at church, not by a lot of people, I'd say a half dozen people, but people who have recently returned to Horizon Church after having been away during most of COVID. And most of the people have said, wow, it's the church has changed. And that is said with a little bit of kind of frustration, like it's not the same church, and having trouble reconnecting. And there have been a few people in the last month that have said that to me, that sense of, wow, this isn't the church that it was when we stopped attending because of COVID, and I don't feel like I'm at the same church, so I'm having trouble reconnecting. And the reality is that that's true. More than 18 months have gone by, and in 18 months, Horizon has changed. And this is something that is always true of the church. There's a great story, the book of Acts. I happen to be reading through the book of Acts right now at home. And the book of Acts, one of the things I don't think you and I understand, the significant change that took place in the world during the book of Acts. The church went from being primarily a Jewish endeavor, Jewish followers of a Jewish Messiah. By the time you get to the end of the book of Acts, there's a sense that the Gentiles outnumber the Jews, and you certainly see that in the letters that Paul wrote. I don't know that anybody counted and if that's accurate, but the book of Acts really recounts how the Church of Jesus Christ went from being primarily Jewish believers following a Jewish Messiah to Gentiles. I don't think any of us today can understand the significance of that transition, because it was absolutely huge. So you have in Acts chapter 15, you have a story of the church leaders getting together. They're actually struggling with, and they're dealing with, and they're wrestling with, what does this mean for us, that we are no longer primarily a Jewish endeavor, that we are now accepting Gentiles. And they struggle with this. And they came up with some decisions, but they recognize this has to be this significant change. It has to be God is at work, and who's going to argue with God? So even the church we've always struggled with this kind of thing. And here's what's interesting about the fact that, more than 18 months have gone by since COVID hit in March of 2020, and we stopped. And here's the interesting thing. For a small handful of us, we never stopped doing what we were doing. We never missed a beat, never missed a day. And we just kept doing what we were doing. For myself, the band, the tech team, Andy, Donna, my wife Donna, she kept coming every Sunday. Kurt Krevling was the other person who kept coming every Sunday, even when we were closed. There was a small handful of people who were here every week. Joanne in the office, Joanne just kept doing her job. We had a conversation, she and I, early on, and we decided we're both fine with this. So she kept coming, I kept coming. So for a small handful of people, we never stopped. And so this sense of, wow, church has changed kind of caught us off guard. Like, what do you mean church has changed? Because for us, we've lived through the change, and it doesn't seem like that big of a deal. There's another group of people who, as soon as we were allowed to start coming back, there was a group of people who last summer started coming back. They only missed 2 to 3 months, if that. And they were back. And so they've lived through many of what's going on at church as well. Not a big deal for them. And then by far, I think the majority of people came back, probably post-Christmas, like the end of winter, this past summer. The majority of the people started coming back. But there's a handful of people that have only come back recently. And those people, when you think about what's happened at Horizon in the last 18 months, it's no wonder that those people are struggling a little bit. And I don't know if they are people that are watching this. But just so that we all understand, if you ever have that sense of feeling like, my goodness, the world has changed, or my goodness, my church has changed, in the last 18 months, even in spite of COVID, we have a whole lot of new people at our church. Our church has continued to grow, and so we have a lot of new people. And a lot of those people have gotten involved, and they're doing things. They're not just new faces sitting in a church on Sunday, but they're new people. They're new people involved in ministries and leadership position. In fact, some of them wouldn't even think of themselves as new people anymore. They've been here for over a year. Some of them started coming just when COVID hit, etc. So there's new people, new faces, and they're involved. We have new ministries at Horizon, even though we went through COVID. We have new ministries at Horizon. We have there's an AA group that now meets here weekly. We now have Scouts on Monday and Tuesday night, Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts who are meeting here. We have a group of women who meet regularly, and they have kind of a knitting ministry. Not only are they learning to knit or crochet, but they're making things that are then handed out to Veterans Group and some other groups. We have our building has changed, and there's another ministry, but I can't remember what men's and women's ministries. Some of that was going on before, but they've kind of the divas in particular have emerged a stronger group than they were pre-COVID, the ladies ministry. Our building has changed. We did some remodeling during COVID. We took advantage of COVID, tore down some walls so that we could create some space. That was something that we were talking about because of the congestion in certain areas of our building on a Sunday morning. We talked about it, and during COVID, we did it. So there are all these kind of issues. Things have changed, and of course they have. New people who are involved, new faces, a lot of new faces. The building has changed, new ministries that have taken place, and all this stuff, has happened during COVID. And so what happens is people come back and it's like, oh my goodness, nothing ever stays the same. You can't step in the same river twice is kind of the idea. And for us, and we don't think about that. We think, well, my goodness, church was closed and COVID happened. The sense that I can just show up on a Sunday and everything's the same, it's never that way. It's not going to be that way. Many years ago, Bishop of our denomination, Bishop Cole, the church I was pastor at in East Greenville, we bought a new building. We bought a school building, and we were remodeling it, moved into it. And Bishop Cole had been at that church many years earlier, had been a pastor at that church, and well respected. He was a bishop of our denomination. So when we bought the new building, we asked him to come and speak. We didn't even move in yet, but asked him to come speak and just talk about the vision for what a church could do in that community. And he talked to me afterwards, and he said, it's interesting. He said, I go to a lot of EC churches, and I haven't been in these churches in 20, 30 years, but a lot of times it's the same people, and nothing has changed. And he said, what's surprising is, I came here to Ebenezer in East Greenville, and he said, I was here, 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was. And he said, gosh, how much has changed. It's amazing, the new people, et cetera. And for him, that was a really cool thing to see, that it wasn't the same church that it was 20 to 30 years ago, that new people were involved. And that's kind of the way it is. That's what happens here. You don't want to see, maybe kind of a dysfunctional parts of us want to see the same thing. We don't want to see change. We want it to be what it always was, same people. But man, if you think about the message of the gospel, how defeating is that if nothing has changed, the same old people after 20 or 30 years? So how exciting is it that there are new people, the church is growing, new ministries are reaching new people, etc. So, you show up and all of a sudden you realize, it's changed. It doesn't feel like my church anymore because, you've been absent for 15, 16, 17, 18 months. It doesn't feel like my church anymore, and I'm having a hard time reconnecting. So here's my advice. Number one, just be happy that the church has changed. It's a really cool thing that even during COVID, even during the difficulty that we've been through, and man, it has been hard for all of us. Even during that time, the church has continued to change. Churches continued to grow. I need to turn my phone off or it's going to keep dinging. Churches continue to grow, new people. Think about the fact that during COVID and all the obstacles that we face, that our church continues to grow. How cool is that? So number one, be glad for it and recognize the good thing about the fact that our church has changed and we've continued to grow even over these past 18, 19, whatever it is, number of months during this difficulty. Number two, take responsibility for reconnecting. It's your job. It isn't anybody else's job. Yes, we work hard at trying to connect people, and there's a connections ministry, and some of our greeters do a great job getting to know people, etc. But we can make an effort to help people connect, but ultimately it's your responsibility. Nobody is going to do this for you. You're going to have to do this. So take responsibility. If it were me, and I mean this sincerely, I've thought about this. If I was a person that was going to a new church, or in a situation like this, I was coming to my church, and I was saying, wow, there's new people here. There's one thing that I would do, a very practical thing. I would sit with somebody every week. Even though I was coming into church with my wife, I would not sit with my wife. I would not find seats by ourselves and sit alone. I would every week sit with somebody else. Or maybe every week sit with people, even if it ends up being the same people. And this is something, a couple years ago, when we were growing and struggling with the same kind of thing, I asked everybody to pledge to this concept: nobody sits alone. That when you walk into a church on Sunday morning, if you see somebody sitting alone, sit with that person. And don't sit by yourselves. And I wish I could get more people to do this. When you come in on a Sunday morning, you don't have to sit just by yourselves. Find somebody else and sit with them. Get to know, even if so maybe you're sitting behind somebody, maybe you're sitting in front of somebody. Get to know these people. Well, that's something that I would do. I would be deliberate about that. And I've talked about the fact many times I'm more on the introverted side. I'm a Pennsylvania Dutch person that's very content being by himself. Nothing makes me happier than being in a tree stand alone all day. I love that. That energizes me. It restores and refreshes me. And yet I know the importance and the value of connecting. It's a very simple thing that I promise you I would do. If I was in a situation like some of you are, I would make sure that every single week I walked in, even if I was with my wife, and we'd find somebody to sit with and we'd make introductions. Number two, don't be afraid to meet new people. A lot of the Sundays we're wearing name tags now, those little paper name tags. So a lot of times people have their names on. So if you're coming back, or even if you're not coming back, even if you've been around and you never really were absent except for those 2 or 3 months when we were closed, you don't be afraid to meet new people. It kind of often surprises me. I'll be talking about somebody and I'll say, oh, they'll say, somebody else will say, well, like, who's that? I say, well, been coming for a while. They sit on this side, blah, blah, blah. Don't be afraid to just go up to somebody and introduce yourself. And even if you stick your foot in your mouth and you feel like, hey, are you new? No, I'm not new. I've been here for 6 months. Ooh, I'm sorry. Are you new? Whatever. No, don't be afraid. Just go up and meet new people. Do not hesitate to go up and say, hi, my name is Bud. I don't think I know you. I don't think we've met yet. And meet new people. So do it. Just be deliberate about it. Stop waiting for somebody else to do it for you. You do it. So I would sit with somebody and meet new people, and then thirdly, volunteer. Be part of something. Sign up for stuff that we do. Get to know people. Nothing works better than when you actually get to work with people and have fun and get to connect with each other. So this is something you're going to have to do. Well, maybe not you. Maybe you're fine. But for all of us who are emerging and we're coming back and we're saying, my goodness, stuff has changed. This isn't the church that I stopped coming to when COVID hit. It's not. And you can be glad for that. We've grown, new people, new ministries, buildings changed, and that's going to continue. So take responsibility for connecting. It's something you're going to have to do. And I would encourage you. You can do it. It's something that's important to us at Horizon Church, helping people connect with God and helping people to connect with each other. And you can do it. You will be blessed and you will benefit from doing it. And then you will recognize what a good thing it is that you're part of a church that really is growing. And that's a cool thing. And so much of that is due to those of you who work hard to connect with people and make people feel welcome. So thank you for what you do. Thank you for helping with that. So let me pray and then we'll be done. God, thank you for how you've continued to work. There is nothing that derails you from the work of your kingdom. There's nothing that causes you to throw up in your hands in frustration and say, I don't know what to do. But even during the worst of times, God, you are still capable of building your kingdom. And God, for us, it's just been a disease. And I know that people have been sick in there, but people that have died, and it's been hard. But God, there are parts of the world where things are so much worse. So for us, in many ways, God, we were able to just keep on going. I thank you, God, for how you have been at work in Horizon Church. God, I thank you that we've grown, that people are taking care of each other and people are connecting. We've grown, we've changed, we've expanded what we're doing and who we are. God, for those people who are struggling because they feel like, man, it's not the church I left and I'm having a hard time reconnecting, I pray, God, that you'd help them to those numerous people. I pray, God, that you'd inspire them, you'd help them to find ways to connect, to be glad that our church has grown, help them to find ways to connect, and help them to take responsibility for doing that. And I pray, God, that that would be the case, that they'd connect, feel welcome, feel part of Horizon Church once again. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, everybody. Well, thank you much. Love you all. Hope you have a wonderful day ahead of you. And I will see you. I don't know what day this is going to play, but whenever the next time is, I will see you. Just trying to make some of these to plug in. See you and have a great day. Love you. Bye.